Why your food is about to taste even worse by Jen. Aside from the fact that we're supposed to eat the bugs and country food from third world countries. What else? What else is there? What else is there? Also, please consider liking, subscribing. I appreciate your support. We will jump in now. We'll see. We'll see. Let's listen about bad food.
If you think restaurant food is starting to taste the same, not only are you correct, you're actually onto something far worse than you might realize. No matter where you go nowadays, restaurant prices are rising and menus all look the same. And one reason is those restaurants are all owned by a few private equity-backed groups.
You could go even further. You could go even further. And they're owned by the same corporate mass. They essentially have one origin point, and somebody owns it all at some point in some way, shape, or form. That's usually how this goes.
But the truth is, they're not actually the only ones you should blame here. Look, I know it's easy to blame them, but private equity has been in restaurants since the 90s, so why is it that only recently food tastes like shit? The bigger problem is supply. A few companies control the supply of food to over 650,000 locations, from your local diner to that fancy white cloth dinner. So there's a good chance your favorite homemade dish at your neighborhood spot probably came from the same factory that's also increasingly supplying hospitals, prisons, and schools. And as I'll reveal, it's creating an interesting paradox, where mom and pop shops are disappearing and restaurants are becoming either low-tier slop bowls or high-end luxury dining. But even with restaurants dividing into these two extremes,
but even if they're luxury, like, you could call them luxury, but if they come from the same supplier, does it even matter? They're all dog shit then. Like, it doesn't even matter then.
The experience everywhere is becoming the exact same, from the look, taste, and paying more for less. And if something isn't done, we won't just be eating worse. We will be losing one of the last things Americans can all enjoy. And in a country this divided, that might actually be the last thing we can afford to lose.
The entire slop bowl industry and the commercial real estate market are interconnected.
Corporate slop bowls, food that's designed to keep the body alive but kill the human soul.
Good food should belong to everybody.
Why are we forced to eat slop? Good question. Doesn't baby food have like 100% the legal amount of lead in the US? Which is very interesting. Also, wasn't it the case that some places somehow got access to like American fast food and then the population got giga fat? Yeah,
So if I'm gonna be real with you, one of the biggest reasons I made this video is because I've been frustrated with the restaurants where I live here in Austin. It's overpriced for mediocre food, and it's easily the most overrated foodie city in the country. But as I found, and as you'll see, this is a problem across America. So if that's the case, surely it's because of private equity, right? I mean, it's not far off. Private equity is buying up all your favorite restaurants, loading them up with debt, cheapening the ingredients, and firing half the staff. And they're consolidating a lot of restaurants under a few brands, like Inspire Brand, backed by private equity firm Rourke Capital, and one of the largest fast food groups in the world, owning Subway, Arby's, Baskin Robbins, just to name a few. There's a few other big restaurant groups doing the—
I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna get hate. I'm gonna say it. Subway ain't that good. Subway's not that good. It's really mid. I'm gonna say it. It's really mid. It's really mid. It is really mid. It is not that. I'm sorry, but it's not that good. I'm sorry. It really isn't that good. Like, local restaurants are much better in general already. Like, I know it's like fast food, and local restaurants should be better, but like, out of all the fast food, I feel like it's just mid. I'm sorry, it's mid.
Exact same thing. So yeah, maybe it is easy to just point the finger at private equity and call it a day. But here's the thing. If incentives reveal outcomes, the last thing private equity would want to do is to make their restaurants go to shit. Sure, they make money regardless through management fees, but the real money comes.
And then I'm gonna throw in another hot take. Burger King burgers are usually better than McDonald's burgers. The only thing that McDonald's does better, first of all, is nuggets and fries. But the burgers are better at Burger King. I don't care what anybody says, they're better.
Comes from achieving growth. When 3G Capital bought a struggling Burger King after the 2008 crash, they did cut a bunch of costs, but they also helped turn the company around.
All problems go back to 2008, I wonder. Huh.
It's a big reason Burger King expanded internationally, and by the end of it, 3G Capital and its co-investors became $14 billion richer. So what I'm trying to say is that it would be disingenuous to say that private equity hasn't helped restaurants. They've been in the space now for over 2 decades, and for most of the time, it worked. Customers kept coming and sales kept growing. Which brings us back to the question, if they're so good at this, why is food only now really starting to taste like doo-doo? Well, here's the thing. The private equity playbook has always cut costs, but there's a case to be made that those cuts have finally hit a breaking point. See, in other industries, private equity can cut corners and
I have another hot take. It's probably not even that the food tastes worse. I think it has something to do with all the stuff we put in our food that makes food nowadays taste bland. I feel like there needs to be the discussion about all the food stuff, like taste changing stuff we throw in that may have an effect on how tasty things actually are after being overexposed to a thing over and over. Burger King just opened in Uzbekistan. That's kind of funny. McDonald's doesn't even feel like real meat. Funnily enough, they tried to look what happens if you try to decompose. If you try to decompose a McDonald's burger, it did not decompose in comparison to, for example, Burger King, which is really interesting.
customers have no choice but to deal with it. When they buy up houses, they use cheaper materials, but you still need a place to live. When they buy retail stores, they replace workers with kiosks, and most customers tolerate it, sometimes even prefer it. But restaurants are different. You need people to cook, you need people to serve, and when you start slashing staff, shrinking portions, swapping fresh ingredients for frozen ones, and refuse to invest in anything long-term, customers notice. And unlike housing where supply is limited, restaurants are everywhere. There's a new spot opening on every corner, so when diners are paying more for smaller portions and worse food, they have choice. But as you'll see later, even that choice is becoming limited. So point is, private equity isn't blameless, and now it's starting to backfire after years of running restaurants with spreadsheets, not taste. But at the end of the day, private equity still only accounts for
I'm also gonna. I'm gonna say it. I think the food inside restaurants overall got worse because most people nowadays order food home to their home, and I think that has to do with that they need to speed up orders. Many people order, so they have to speed up orders, which means the food isn't made in a do you say a loving way? And it's just like being thrown out. I think that may also be a reason.
10% of restaurants. So if we're seeing this across almost all restaurants, then who is to blame for this sudden decline? Turns out it's not those who's buying the restaurants, it's who's feeding them. Because behind almost every restaurant, be it a chain or your local bistro, there's the same small group of giant distributors supplying them all. And once you realize this, you'll see you never really had choice to begin with. For most of the 20th century, restaurants bought their ingredients from local suppliers, butchers, bakers, and other small distributors. But today, that model has quietly been replaced by these broadline distributors. A broadliner is kind of like a Costco for restaurants. One company that can sell you everything you need to run a food business, from meat, produce, canned goods, napkins, cleaning supplies, pre-made desserts, even the to-go containers. And there's one name dominating the industry: Cisco. Founded in 1969, Cisco didn't just grow organically, but by merging 9 smaller distributors into the first.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Now, if you eat it often, it won't feel special. People just eat out more. Well, not really eat out, they order more, realistically. At home. Eat out is not really a word I would use.
First true national food service supplier. Over the decades, Cisco has acquired well over 150 smaller companies and rolled them into its empire, where now only two competitors like US Foods and Performance Food Group remain. And these companies form such a monopoly that Cisco and US Foods are estimated to control 75% of the food distribution market, serving not just 450,000 restaurants, but also 200,000 more hotels, hospitals, schools, and prisons. So if I had to bet a lot of money, we've all tasted Cisco food without you even knowing it. The question becomes, why are restaurants even going along with this? It's because Cisco knows who they're selling to a T, and it's because they help.
See, ironically enough, we have a different problem here. They're nuke. They nuke their what's the word? They nuke the farmers here in Europe right now, so they can import food from less quality, less safe to eat, less standards for cheap. That's what they're doing right now. That's why they're getting their ass beat in Brussels. Really funny. Really funny. The EU, that is. It's the same thing, Duck. You don't make it yourself. Obviously, yes.
Create the conditions around it. Look, running a restaurant is brutal business. The margins are notoriously low even at the best of times. And in a recent survey, 9 out of 10 operators said that labor costs are a big challenge, and a lot of restaurants struggle to find staff to meet that demand. So if only there was a pre-prepped everything that...
If you want to get your labor costs down, you need less people. But you want more people. But in order to get more people, you have to pay them. Very funny.
Not only saves money, but also saves time for the existing staff that's already overworked and often underpaid, especially if that restaurant is owned by private equity. And that's exactly what Cisco provides, because they're not just supplying ingredients, they're buying pre-baked bread, sauces, desserts, and even that expensive steak that you might have just ordered might be one of their pre-grilled steak strips. But as I mentioned, the bigger underlying reason is that these restaurants are going with a Cisco isn't because they just want to, but because of the immense power that they hold. And because of...
So to simplify, potentially, let's say you order a pizza. That bitch may come pre-made, so not even the restaurant makes it. That bitch just comes pre-made, the restaurant warms it up, and then you just get your pizza. Like a frozen pizza, but you pay more than you would if you got a frozen pizza from the supermarket. What the fuck? That sounds horrible. That sounds horrible.
With that power, they can raise prices at a whim, have late or damaged deliveries or ingredient swaps, and especially small restaurants in rural areas don't really have any negotiating power because they don't really have any other choice. And that monopoly that they pretty much hold almost became even more powerful in 2015. Cisco tried to merge with US Foods, but that deal was blocked by the FTC after they found that they would have controlled 75% of the national market. But even just a few months ago, another merger was attempted between US Foods and this time with Performance Food to create the largest food distributor in the US, but they actually ultimately scrapped talks due to similar antitrust concerns just this November. But even with failed mergers, it hasn't stopped them from expanding to more restaurants. Because if you thought that this only applies to fast food joints, think again. Even in fine dining restaurants, there's a growing demand for pre-cut, pre-washed, and pre-prepped items, and it's exactly why menus across the nation...
Diabolical. Imagine you go into a restaurant, think you eat fancy, and then you just pay more for a pre-made product. Diabolical. That's diabolical if that happens.
Are all starting to look the same no matter what price point and where you eat. So whether it's a hole in the wall or a fancy restaurant downtown, in many ways they're all doing this because it's now one of the only choices, and it becomes a necessity to keep up with the rising costs of everything. So yeah, private equity is partly to blame, but these food distributors are the one who has created this ingredient monoculture, where the inputs are the same, then the output starts to taste the same, and the only difference now is the restaurant sign and their interior designs. But even that's about to change. Because an unusual paradox is forming where things are becoming extreme, but also the same. And news can feel the same way. You scroll long enough and it's extreme outrage.
Let me Guess. Let me guess. The sponsor. He's mentioned news. I'm saying ground news. I'm saying ground news. The sponsor's ground news.
From both sides, but it all feels the same. This is why I've been using our sponsor, Straight Arrow News. Straight Arrow.
Never mind. Never mind. I'm incorrect. Straight Arrow News with FKK area. You can't walk around naked.
News delivers news the way it should be. Clear, balanced, and focused on facts that you can actually trust. And you get context and multiple viewpoints and deeper explanations so you understand what is happening instead of
So it is basically just ground news. Okay.
reacting to whatever headline is designed to go viral. And the best part is that it actually helps you spend less time guessing which source to believe. You can follow the topics you care about, build your own personalized queue, and watch anytime on the app or redesigned website. Go to san.com/gen or scan the QR code and start getting better news today. And now back to the paradox I was talking about. Because what we're starting to see is a weird paradox in the restaurant industry, where at the same time everything tastes and feels the same, a weird economic horseshoe is forming where the extremes are squeezing out the middle. And even those extremes are also starting to look the same, which all this kind of sounds crazy and confusing, but bear with me, it will all make sense in a second. Just like the middle class in the US is disappearing, so are the mid-tier restaurants. And what we're left with are increasingly polar opposites between low-tier fast food and high-end luxury dining. As you can guess, a lot of it is driven by inflation and economic uncertainties, as eating out is becoming.
To be fair, I do definitely believe that a lot of these like high-end restaurants have some weird shit going on where the food isn't the quality they say they do and they literally just charge you more. I do believe that's been going on, and I think that's been a general issue. I don't think that they're being honest about what they're giving us.
More of a luxury for some families, and these people are choosing the extremes for that reason. Instead of going to that local restaurant with mid-tier prices, they may just trade down by grabbing a fast food burger here and there, or if they decide to eat out, treat it as a special occasion to go big on a fancy dinner. So due to this, the social experience of dining is changing to be either utilitarian or luxury, and those mid-tier restaurants that are mostly mom and pop restaurants and that don't have centralized prep kitchens, bulk purchasing contracts, or Wall Street money are increasingly getting squeezed from both sides. Once they're out, the landlords want to replace them with reliable tenants, so franchises are swooping in to take their place. And nothing encapsulates this better than corporate slop bowls. The food that's designed to keep the body alive but kill the human soul. The bland, beige, sad mush of chicken, quinoa, and lettuce designed to be eaten fast and efficiently during.
Yeah, that has been a thing. Good reason, Burger. We've seen many cases like that, and actually it can prove them in our everyday life. Obviously, yeah, the garbage bowls, as I like to call them. The garbage bowls, true.
During your 15-minute lunch break before you go back to your cubicle and your Excel spreadsheets. Kava, Sweetgreen, Chipotle, they've colonized every financial district, occupying the exact real estate that used to belong to actual restaurants. And you know who has a significant ownership stake in all three? That's right, it's BlackRock and Vanguard, the very same asset management companies whose.
Oh no, BlackRock and Vanguard are in there. Who would have guessed? They're also in every bank. Every major corporation. You cannot avoid them. They're everywhere. They have a stock everywhere.
Wage slaves rely on these bowls for sustenance. And here's the thing. These slot bowls were supposed to be the cheap option, but even this budget, fast casual food has become overpriced. And Chipotle is probably the worst example, raising their prices 6 times since 2021. Can you believe it used to cost only this? And as every city continues to get divided.
The only time I go out to eat is to go eat at a nice place, take out. It is true. I remember when you could get just like. Remember when a McDonald's, like a hamburger or cheeseburger, would be $1, €1? Like, it would just be €1. It would just be universally everywhere €1. And there was a point where it was even cheaper than €1. I remember that. I remember when getting kebab was like what, 350? I remember that. Now it's like 850. I want to go back to those times. There was a back in my days, there was a spot even in Germany where they tried to beat each other's ass, the restaurants, where they would go lower and lower and lower and lower, so you could like get like a kebab for like what, €1 maybe. But can I cry a bit? Go ahead. I like your tears. Let me lick them. I'm tasting them.
These two extremes, an interesting thing is happening where even the extremes are starting to look the same. Because the absence of these mid-tier restaurants created a vacuum, and investors rushed in not to fund creative food, but to fund concepts. This is why every new American restaurant in the country suddenly has exposed brick, light bulbs hanging from the ceiling, hard as fuck metal chairs where you can't sit for more than 30
Yeah, the hard as fuck metal chairs. Imagine you sit on them. Bro, your ass is gonna hurt so much.
minutes, and some corny live, love, laugh sign in the restaurant, all to eat a $24 burger. So why do you think I hate Austin food so much? It's because it's full of these soulless restaurants like this. But the thing is, it's not an accident. It's happening everywhere. I think you all know this, but the restaurant business is a cutthroat business, and investors don't want creativity. They want provable, scalable concepts so their restaurant doesn't go under in 5 years. But what this has created now, though,
If you go like to do two different burger places and they look and taste the same, something's off.
is chefs that actually want to create authentic, innovative restaurants have a lot harder time breaking through to investors or customers. And with the rise of delivery apps, it's further resulting in trading authentic food for convenience. With delivery apps taking 15 to 30% of every order, restaurants have redesigned menus around stuff that travels well in a DoorDash box. So nothing delicate, nothing fragile, just wings, burgers, fries, and slot bowls. Anything you can make in bulk, box cheaply, and later stuff in a microwave. You can see now how we've ended up in this kind of culinary horseshoe, where the low tier and the high-end restaurants are slowly bending towards each other, melting into one giant slop bowl of this
Again, doesn't surprise me. One anime terrorist, man. It is what it is. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense what this is that this is happening. It makes sense.
seasoned mix of identical corporate investors, suppliers, and templated concepts. And America's restaurant landscape is starting to look like the country itself, split into two extremes with nothing in the middle. But what no one has talked about is how this vicious cycle goes way beyond restaurants. It's actually a larger commentary of something bigger happening in American culture.
But it's the truth. Convenience is gonna beat anything, right? We have the whole discussion with generative AI. Generative AI is gonna win. It's more convenient, and you don't have to pay any money for now. But even that's gonna push through eventually.
Because I think you can all agree that eating food isn't just about getting fed. It's a ritual that everyone can share. But when all that is being abandoned for this pursuit of endless convenience and efficiency, the consequence will be losing something far more important in the process. And if something isn't done, there will be no shared experiences left. Because even if you are one of those people that only eat food for subsistence, you can't deny that forever that family-owned diner was one of the few third places that the community.
I'm gonna say this, even if there was no convenience, this is still not happening. This is still not happening. Like, the shared food culture, like eating together, that's still not existing. Listen. Parents are already not eating with their children. Parents aren't even eating together. At most, people are eating together at weekends. And that is if you're lucky. Listen, most children already eat in school. So that there won't be not much like anything like social about this already. Then you have the parents coming home at different times, probably eating at different times. It just makes sense. That thing has been dead the moment you had two parents in the workforce or multiple people in the workforce, that thing is dead. That thing has died. Like food culture in the way where you share a meal, that has been dying years ago. That's dead years ago.
Didn't just go for special occasions, but places where you can just go to. I mean, think about how many movies in the 90s and early 2000s used diners, coffee shops, and little cafes as their backdrop. And even if the country was indeed as divided as it is right now, restaurants like that were a small glue where people could just exist with other people. But as more and more of those restaurants struggle or close or resort to cutting corners with a Cisco and
I would still not use that. Even if you just consider friends, they're still not eating much together. That's still not really happening. That is still not really happening. Because different work times, different things you have to do, right? This still is really not happening. Like sharing a meal together, social gatherings, that has been dying years ago.
in order to stay alive, we're losing that culture and connection. And as more competition is eliminated with consolidation, it looks like it might get even worse as you continue to pay more for less. And yeah, it's tempting to just blame corporations or private equity or the system, but here's the uncomfortable truth. Somewhere along the way, we've all quietly accepted this. We've normalized mediocrity. From airlines that actually used to be nice, housing that was a core component of the American dream, and entertainment like I talked about in my piracy video, and on and on. So we can blame all those entities all we want, and we would be justified in that, but we've also are the ones who normalize mediocrity in exchange for convenience. But
again, I don't really think that has... The rise of convenience is because people have more stressful times. Not the other way around. People are not eating together anymore because their lives are the way they are, not because the culture around food has changed. If people have multiple jobs, you are not eating with others. You will be eating quickly by yourself as fast as you can because you got to go to the next job. If you live in a family and both parents have to work, chances are you, the child, are going to eat by essentially not with your family. Your father won't, your mother won't, your siblings won't. That is how things are right now. That was not the case at one point. That was not the case at one point. And it was because one parent, one family member was always at home. If it was both parents working, you had a generational household where, for example, grandparents would be living there. So you'd still have social gatherings around food. Don't get me started with friends. People don't meet each other anymore, so that is like a lot less than they usually did during times. So that's also over. You also have to consider everything got more expensive. That has died not because of the convenient food. That has died because we had a change in our system.
there is hope. A lot of millennials and Gen Z are looking at corporate slop bowls and realizing that they're only paying for branding and some form of nostalgia, and it's not just worth it. And the slop companies are taking the hit. Sweetgreen stock is down almost 90% after their IPO, and Cava and Chipotle is tremendously down from their previous highs. Because surprise, surprise, people don't want to pay $17 for some soulless mush. And so
That's not it. That's not it. I'm gonna say that's not it. It's not because people realize suddenly, oh, this is garbage. That's not it. They simply can't afford it. That's the reason. They simply cannot afford it. It's not because, oh, they realized that this is slop they're eating. That's not it. Disagree. That's not it. It's the fact that they just can't afford it. $16 for essentially slop that doesn't fill you. Not worth it. You're not gonna buy that. It's the prices. If the shit was cheap, people would eat it. Simple.
here's some hope I can leave you. Unlike housing or airlines where you're stuck with limited options, food is one area where you actually have a choice. Look, you can keep ordering the slop bowl, or you can pay a few dollars more for that local spot that's actually trying to maintain one of the last things we can all enjoy. And I know what you're thinking, it's just dinner, it's not that deep. But that's where you're wrong. The more you choose convenience and accept the mediocrity that comes with it, the more you're voting for the kind of culture you want to keep alive. So there's a lot more I can say on this topic, and I'll be diving even deeper into this next week in my free newsletter in the video description. But if you haven't seen my video on how we've accepted mediocrity in entertainment, go and watch our video on how private equity made piracy great again, and like this video to...
Well, again, I wouldn't say private equity. It's more so like people would pay if everything was on the same platform, but since not everything is on the same platform, it's also that some media is nowhere available, so you have no other choice. That's also a big point. That's a big point, and you can't really push private equity as like the reason for why video games are being pirated. Would also use that. Regardless, interesting. He is right in the sense that we are eating slop. I wouldn't say that he's right in the sense that the slop is their food, the way of making food is the reason why people do pick convenience now. The reason for convenience is time. It's that simple. It's time. Anyways, like, comment, and subscribe.